So tonight, welcome to Venus Rising Radio with your host, Venus Vox. Tonight we have a very special guest, Erin Anderson, who is quite active in the musical theater world here in Tucson. And I can't wait to share her story with you.
Venus, Earth's evil twin. It's clouds made of battery acid. At 900.
Take off to the planet, Venus.
Erin, thank you for joining me today on Venus Vox Radio.
I am so happy to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Oh, I'm so excited. Every time I meet a new musician in town, a new singer, it just really excites me. And I think, oh my God, even more talent here in Tucson.
I know, isn't that insane how much talent we have here? And I'm exactly the same way.
Wow, really? Yeah. How long have you been here? Have you been here?
I have been here since mid-2011, so almost a decade now.
Wow, what brought you here?
At the time, work. I had just graduated college. I was not in music at the time. I had done music throughout college, done it a little bit before college, but my major took me in a different direction. And I was married at the time, and my husband got a job out here. So we, right after graduation, we packed up and came out here.
Wow.
I'd never been here.
Where were you from?
Los Angeles.
Oh my gosh. Okay. LA girl.
That's right.
California girl.
That's it's so true. You can't take the California out of the girl.
No, you just can't. You can't do that. So tell me, how did you start your musical journey? Did you do music as a kid and then kind of get back into it when you were here in Tucson, or?
I did. So when I come from a pretty musical, like extended family. I'm the oldest of three girls. All of us are musical on some level. Most of us are like singers. And my parents don't really play any instruments or sing, but my grandmother was a prolific piano player, and my uncle plays the drums and the guitar, and my cousin plays the guitar and the trumpet, and everybody plays something. So, but I was never any good at playing anything, so I just kept singing. I just kept singing. That was the only thing that I felt like that really connected with me. So growing up, I had all of these wonderful, talented musicians in my family. When we had family gatherings, we'd do little jams, just like informal family jam type things. And as I got a little older, into the beginnings of high school, I started to really bother my mom for voice lessons. I was like, Mom, I want to do voice lessons. Yeah. And I finally got her to enroll me in some group voice lessons. And just because I was curious and I wanted to see what I could do. And that's kind of where it really took off. I would inquire up until that point, but I was terrified of being in front of people by myself.
Oh, yes, I understand.
I was very scared, but I don't know what got a hold of me, some wild hair. It's like, you should take voice lessons and stand in front of people by yourself and sing. Like, all right, I guess that's what we're doing.
What gets us to do that?
I don't know. I don't remember. I remember being terrified in middle school, auditioning for a solo at something. And you could barely hear me. Oh my gosh, you could barely hear me. It was so soft. I remember the teacher telling me that. She's like, I can't hear you, but you can definitely hear me now.
Absolutely. So after high school, you went to college and went in a different direction and then moved here. And what sparked you to get back into music here?
Well, we moved out here and I knew nobody. We had moved just kind of like very quickly out of the blue. We knew nobody. My husband had a job, but I was still looking for one. And I wanted something to get me out of the house. So when I was in college, my first major had been music. And then I had changed it and went in a different direction. So I found Pima here, the community college, and I looked and see if they had any musical theater classes here, because that is what my love was when I was in college, like in my early years of college.
Okay.
So they did, I think it was the first semester that they were offering a musical theater workshop class. And I was still looking for a job and I wanted someone to get me out of the house. So I'm like, I'm going to enroll in this class. I'm going to go and I'm going to sing and it'll be fun. And I will get to stretch my legs a little bit. It'll get me out of the house. I will get to meet some people here and sort of make some friends and start putting down roots here. Right. So that was how I did that. And I actually met some wonderful people that I'm still friends with today.
Cool. So you did the class and that was fun. How long did the class last? Did you do 1 or 2 semesters or a couple years? Or?
I think I did 2 semesters. And then Pima has musicals every year. And so I auditioned for the musical there. I think in 2011 or 2012, it was Curtains, the musical. And I got cast. I was cast as one of the leads. And I had a fun time. I had so much fun. And again, great way to make connections, great way to meet people. It was great to not be stuck in the house. And that was kind of my just start in like dipping my toes, not professionally, but just dipping my toes back in the water of music. I wanted to start putting roots here, like I said, and music always makes me feel very connected. So it was a good way to go.
That's an awesome story. That's a really great idea, a great way to go into it and to make connections that way and to be able to just have a good time while making friends.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun. I still have a lot of fun. All my musical theater friends, I still have a lot of fun. The ones that I met then, the ones that I met like going forward, we have a blast.
So had you at that point performed professionally at all at that point? Or?
Yes, I had done a little professional performing in college, and some before, but not too much. And it wasn't anything huge, mostly in group settings, but still like professional paid stuff. And I didn't really, when I was in college, I kind of I started out in the music path, and then I kind of got wooed by some of the naysayers, surrounding music, or like, you'll never make a living at it, I got scared. And so I changed my major, and did something that I actually do use now, but anthropology and archaeology, comparative analysis was my major. So, I mean, I didn't really switch it for any like hard science or anything like that. But
so comparative science, is that cultural archaeology or cultural studies, or is that what?
So my emphasis was archaeology, which is like the study of like what humans leave behind, right?
Right.
In the historical and non-historical record, like before history became recorded. So it does have a cultural aspect. We're studying the remnants of like human culture, basically.
I got mixed up with anthropology, culture.
It is a branch. It is a branch of anthropology. It's just basically the physical stuff like that we can like pull out of the ground and see like the physical evidence of what's left behind.
And so you're using that now?
I am. So a lot of my lab work in college was sort of comparative analysis type stuff. I worked in the zooarchaeology lab, which means I've worked with remnants of animal bones and things that had been that humans had interacted with. So either they had butchered it for food, or maybe they made tools out of it. Maybe it was just that maybe they had made jewelry out of the things. Like, so I worked in that laboratory, and we had to learn the difference between a mark on a bone that a human made or a tool made versus something that like an animal made when it was ripping it apart, if it was eating it, that type of thing. So I learned to distinguish different types of tool marks from one another. I learned to categorize bones and taxonomy and things like that. Right. And so I did very, very detail-oriented laboratory work when I came to Tucson, when I first found a job, it was at a credit union. So I worked at the credit union for about a year. At the same time I got hired there, I applied at the crime lab here in Tucson. My husband at the time had taken a tour of the crime lab because he was a cadet, and that's what they do. They take them through the crime lab and explain to them how it works. And he got in contact with one of the supervisors there and said, hey, my wife really would love, she's very interested in this. Can she email you? And the supervisor said, sure. And I did email her, and she said, you know, we don't have anything open right now, but, you know, I'll keep you in mind for future. And of course, I'm like, she'll never.
I know, right? Exactly.
That's ridiculous.
Happen.
But like 6 months later, she remembered me. She emailed me and said, hey, we have this grant-funded position in the firearms section doing some like technician work. She's like, you know, it's not, it's part-time and it's grant funded, and, you know, it could go away at any time, but it would be a really great way to like get your foot in the door. Would you like to apply? So I did apply, and I waited a whole year from the time I applied to the time I got called to interview. It was a whole year.
Oh my God.
First, I was like, never call me. Like so many people, you know, so many people interviewed. But lo and behold, they did call me eventually, and they were like, hey, would you like to come do this work with us in the crime lab, this firearms technician style work? And I was like, yes, of course I will. So firearms kind of leave fingerprints on, it's a really I'm really simplifying it, but
right.
When a firearm's fired and the cartridge case is ejected, mm-hmm. It's leaving really unique tool marks that are unique to that firearm on that cartridge case, and the cartridge case is getting left behind if it's a semi-automatic firearm and it's ejecting and they're not picked up. So it's leaving traces of that firearm everywhere that's being used when there's cartridge cases. And so what I do is I work on a system that images those cartridge cases, and long story short, it gives like a list back of potential connections based on algorithms that run on different parts of the cartridge case. I know, it's so cool. I to me to have me deserve to work in the job that I do because it's super cool. So it was along that line, you know, it was tool mark, mm-hmm. categorization, excuse me, working in like mm-hmm. some form of comparative analysis. And there are a lot of techniques that archaeologists use that actually people in the crime lab use as well.
That is fascinating. That is totally fascinating and so surprising. I mean, who would have thought working in a crime lab, you know, it would never have occurred to me, you know.
I got really excited. I get really excited about what I do, and so I just go on and on about my job.
Wow. So you basically have two passions then.
I do. Mm-hmm. I love my day job. I love my career. It's kind of evolved from forensic technician, firearm style work to a coordinator, like a combo position, and an analyst. Like I get to do a little bit of everything, and it's so cool. And I love the mission and trying to prevent, you know, firearms crimes from happening by taking this stuff off the streets. Mm-hmm. By any means that we can do that. And I get to sing still. I get to, even though I didn't major in music, somehow, you know, luck hit me on the head with a hammer or something, and I get to sing as well. And I'm getting awesome. Lucky.
Well, let's turn to the singing for a little bit. And so I asked you for a list of people who had influenced you, and what was maybe your first influence to really get into singing and really begin developing that part of you?
So the stuff that I remember, the earliest stuff that I can remember, mm-hmm. was that I like pulling from when I was singing is grew up in Southern California. In Southern California, at least then, back in like late 80s, early 90s, there was a radio station called KRS 101. It was the oldies radio station. And my mom would play the oldies, and we'd drive. Everybody who's been to California knows that there's traffic everywhere. So we would drive and be stuck in traffic and be listening to all of this music that Aretha Franklin, the Vandellas, Diana Ross and the Supremes, Dionne Warwick, like all of this stuff was playing, and that's what stuck in my head. That's what I remember hearing, like when we were stuck in all this traffic, I used to hear this beautiful music, and it was really catchy, and I really loved it. And so that's some of the earliest stuff that I listened to that I was like, oh, like this is really catchy. I could really get into this. So a lot of oldies, a lot of Motown, some funk and soul. On the musical theater end, obviously Disney was a huge influence on me. I grew up in the golden age. Oh my
God, of course. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So like all of those golden age millennial princess movies, Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, what else? Mulan, all that stuff. Those were the musical theater influences, because like all of those singers that sang the parts of those women, they were all upright,
Right, exactly. There's some amazing singers and amazing musicians in Disney productions. I mean, over the years. Yeah. So when you would jam with your family, what would you end up singing?
So my family is, it was more, funny enough, like church songs. My family was really religious at one point, and so we would sing a lot of religious music, which helped, because eventually I got into gospel. My family is not necessarily, I'm the one with the most funk and soul in my family, I think, by far. So it wasn't like they were super funky or soul filled, but they had passion, and that's what counted. And it really helped when I started to learn more about different styles of music. And I learned that I could take what I had heard on the radio, right, with like Aretha, because she started in the church, and like Vandellas and like all this stuff, right? I could take that, and like lo and behold, these women, started like in the church, wailing, singing gospel. Mm-hmm. I found that I could like take that and apply it to what I was doing, and I really felt it in my soul. So it started with the church music. It wasn't super soulful when my family did it, but I learned to kind of bring my own brands, influenced by those women of color that like paved the way.
Yeah, no, that is really cool. And so then you go to school, and you were getting into musical theater, and tell me a little bit about that.
So my senior year of high school, I've always been a very exuberant, dramatic person, just a lot of energy, a lot of my eyes light up. I'm just big. I'm a big person, big personality. And for some reason, even though I had watched Disney growing up constantly, which is just one big musical theater like parade, I never really thought about doing musical theater. My senior year in high school, the choir teacher pulled me aside and was like, hey, can you audition for this show? Because there's a role, and I don't know who I'm going to get to do it, and I would really like you to sing. So I'm like, sure, why not? I was like, oh, he's asking me to audition. And the show was, what was it? How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying.
Oh, I've heard of that, yeah.
And so he asked me to audition. I said, okay. And I auditioned, and it was like, it fit like a glove. Just the whole thing. Just the reading and the acting and the playing off of people and the singing, obviously. Like, it was just a perfect fit. I felt so at home. This is where I belong. This is like, there's a place for people like me, and it is musical theater. Yeah, it was real. I mean, my talents, my natural talents, I guess, just being a very exuberant, engaged person, were very well matched naturally with this medium.
So see that.
And I was like, that was it.
I can so see that. And so that's what made you feel like going into musical theater when you went to college.
Absolutely. Yes.
And that is so true about those type of influences that really make us, well, actually what I was really going to is the idea that we get that fear and we start doing something else. And, you know, because it is taught to us all over the place. You know, my family too, we're terribly musical, but oh no, you don't do that for a career.
Yeah. Yes, you do.
No. Go into computers was my dad's thing. Do computer.
I didn't even get an alternate. They didn't give me an alternate. They were just like, pick something that you can make a living.
Well, that's really nice because, yeah, they were trying to get me to go into computers, and I was like, oh no.
But thank you.
Yes. So tell me a little bit about, so you suggested a couple songs that have a strong influence for you. Pat Benatar, Hit Me, With Your Best Shot. Aretha Franklin, you talked about. Tina Turner with Proud Mary, and Whitney Houston. Tell me how these different singers influenced you as a singer.
Oh man. Well, like I said, the oldies with these with women of color is where I just remember it's where I felt most comfortable when I thought about singing with heart. These are the women that I thought about. All kinds of different, it depends on the style. I do a lot of different styles. And so for each style, I have these wonderful, like amazing women that are just masters of their craft. I mean, I talked about Aretha Franklin with her like gospel influences and her like soul and funk influences. I was born in the 80s, right? And I grew up in the late 80s, early 90s. So some of the female rock musicians like Pat Benatar, I don't think I included her, but like the Runaways.
Oh yes, the Runaways.
Joan Jett. Like some of these like rocking 80s women influenced my like rock and roll sound. Barracuda, Heart. Yes, those women, like when I sing rock and roll music, particularly things out of the 70s and early 80s, like that comes out in that. I have like the women that I idolize in these specific genres all have tons of, not like music soul, but like they have tons of heart, pun intended.
I know,
like,
right?
They're powerful and they stand in their freaking power and they don't apologize for it.
I love that.
No matter who they are. And something about that is so, I don't know, I mean, I was so young when I started listening to some of this stuff that I don't know, I couldn't have known that consciously, but I definitely picked up on it subconsciously. Wow. And I was like, these women know what they're doing. They know what they're talking about. They are powerful and they are front and center, and they're not going to say sorry for it.
Right.
They're going to be who they are. And you like them or you don't. You like them or you don't. They're doing it because they love it and because they feel a passion for it and because they believe in what they're singing. They're connected to the material. I have never been, I'm not very drawn to artists that have a disconnect between themselves and the material. I think that's just an artist thing, like we can tell, you can tell when somebody isn't fully engaged for whatever reason. And it may not be their fault. It's not like maybe they're just having an off day. We all have off days.
Right.
These women were so engaged and so powerful and so trailblazing, like none of who's another one? Piece of My Heart. Janis Joplin.
Okay,
Like,
yes, I know. Wait, I know that. Who is it?
I think she did a cover of, as everybody's done a cover of that. But Amazing. Dolly Parton's another one. I don't really sing country music. I can, but it's just not like, it's not where I like feel the real vibe, you know? But like Dolly Parton is.
Dolly is, it's amazing. Exactly right. She's so amazing.
Sweetheart. So I don't know. I've gravitated towards powerful women who stand in their power and are okay with being who they are. Yeah, and I think in a lot of ways that has influenced the way my life has gone, and the way that I've stepped into just being myself over the last, you know, even just 5 years, like being okay with being who you are, not being haughty about it. Obviously, don't be like, you know, vain about it. And I'm not talking just music. I'm just talking about like personality.
Exactly, in life, the whole.
Just being okay with being your authentic and honest self, and knowing that you can have room for improvement and still improve, and also not have to apologize for you.
Right.
So I just made that connection. All these powerful women that I've idolized in music, that seemed to be a theme for me.
Oh, that's so cool. No, I appreciate that a lot. And I appreciate you making that distinction. I'm realizing I've been doing this whole interview without me in the picture.
Oh no, you left me. I hope you didn't leave just me.
So here I am. I completely forgot.
Welcome to your own interview. Welcome to your own radio show.
You know, it's so funny because I haven't done it for so long that I'm out of practice of doing these shows, but that's all good. It's all good. So anyway, let's take a little moment and talk about, and what I'll do is when I actually put the interview together, I will add the tracks. So I've got Wild Women, Don't Get the Blues, Royals by Lord, On My Own from Les Mis, and Ain't No Mountain High Enough. What would you like to start with?
Oh gosh. Let's do Royals. Why not?
Okay, tell me a little bit about your inspiration for doing that song.
So I have I do a lot of different styles. I have a wonderful guitarist that I work with in Tucson. His name is Sean Gale. We haven't been doing much since COVID has like shut everybody in their houses. But before COVID, we were doing some real like intimate jazz sit downs just around town at bars and stuff, real fun. And it's a wonderful partnership because there's a lot of experimentation and just fooling with stuff, like reforming it and putting into different packages and sort of just experimenting and going with the flow and having fun. And so I don't know what compelled me to do it, but I was working out one day and it came on my playlist and I listened to it and I was like, I wonder what Sean and I can do with this song. Let's go run it by him. And so I don't remember exactly, but I probably sent it to him and was like, hey, we should do this and we should like strip it down and make it a little like more syncopated and just a little funky and see what we can do with it and if it's awful, then we don't ever perform it in front of people. And if it's good, then we add it to our book. And that's what we did. Came into my kitchen and set up the amps and stuff and set up my mic and we just hammered it out and figured it out. And it was at that point in my, this was a year, maybe a year and a half ago, I was listening to a lot of Esmeralda Spalding, Gretchen Parlato, a lot of like modern jazz women that I wasn't actually super familiar with. When I talked about jazz, some of my influences, like Ella Fitzgerald's one of my biggest influences, and she's like way back in the 30s, right? So when I started wanting to do more modern stuff, I was like, well, I gotta get with the times. And so by going to jams and stuff, I picked up that this was it was a very, I wanted it to feel more modern in that sense. I wanted it to feel a little bit more like Metropolitan. We had limitations because it's just he and I. But I think we do a good job of kind of like mixing it up to the point where it's familiar, but it's just different enough that it's very interesting to listen to.
Okay, well, let's take a moment and we'll listen to it. And then moving on, we have some other styles as well. We've got the musical theater On My Own from Les Miserables.
Yes. So, funny story. Back in 2014, Arizona On Stage, theater company here, did Les Mis. I had never auditioned for them before. Les Mis is one of the most like popular musicals of all time, but I had never listened to the soundtrack. I didn't know what it was about, but they were auditioning, and so I said, I'm gonna go in and audition and see what happens. So I went in and auditioned, and I got cast. I got cast as Eponine in that production. Yeah. So I had no preconceived notions about what the show was supposed to be because I didn't know it before I got cast.
Wow.
So I got to learn the role of Eponine from like scratch. I got to really connect with her on a journey of like growing through that show myself as well. And it was absolutely wonderful. And it's like like I said, it's one of the most iconic shows, one of the most iconic songs in musical theater. So it was really kind of intimidating to take that on.
Imagine.
But it's still, because it's one of my first professional lead roles, first professional lead roles here in Tucson. It holds a real special place in my heart, and I will sing. It's in my book now, that song. And it's not a song that you would normally put in your book because it's so overdone. It can be overdone because Les Mis is so popular, but I'm really confident that I've got it. I feel good and connected with it, and so it's in my book now. I don't necessarily use it to audition, but I always feel grounded in that song when I sing it, always.
Wow, that's really cool. And that actually leads really naturally into this next question. How did you get started in musical theater here in Tucson?
So I did a couple shows. I mentioned Pima. I did the workshops there. I did the shows. And then I think somebody, I can't remember who, mentioned to me like, hey, you should go audition. Like, I think they mentioned The Gaslight. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know what it was. I just moved here. I was like, well, sure, I'll go audition at a theater that serves dinner and there's a stage. I'll go do that. And so I auditioned at The Gaslight a couple times. It was a good experience. I got good audition experience. And then there was another theater that was actually, so I live on the northwest side and I always have. Gaslight's way out east, which is a really long drive for me. But up in Oro Valley at the time, I think like 2013, 2014, there was a theater that opened up there that had a similar concept. And I saw the casting call. Somebody had told me about the Tucson Stage blog. I saw the casting call and I was like, well, I'll go up there and audition and see what happens. So I did. I went up there and auditioned, and I think it was called the Great American Playhouse. Yeah. So I went up and auditioned and I got cast. It's melodrama. So it's like a little tongue-in-cheek, like, mostly comedy, a lot of breaking from character, but it was very, very fun. So I auditioned for that. I got cast there, which wasn't exactly musical theater. But then some of the people that I was doing the show with there told me about like the audition for Les Mis. and they said, you should come and audition. And I was like, well, all right, like I'll go do it. So it was basically people that I had met, you know, people that I met in the course of my show that I got cast in up there. Just kind of word of mouth was like, hey, you should, and that's kind of the best way to learn about it, I think.
And so, remind me, I forgot, who did you say put on Les Mis?
It was Arizona On Stage Productions.
And then where do they have their shows?
So they have done shows in all kinds of different spaces. This show was put on in the Berger Center at the Arizona School for the Deaf and Blind. And they've done some phenomenal other shows. You know, they did Mamma Mia, I think it was last year or the year before. They did Producers a couple of years ago, which was great. Wow. And I've done things with other theater companies as well. We tend to, the musical theater people in town, I think, tend to all, there's several companies, and so we all tend to like hop around a little bit because there's so many opportunities. And it's just fun. It's fun to sample different styles of directing, different styles of show. So I've done, in addition to Arizona On Stage, I worked with Roadrunner Theater when they were open here. I worked with Lonely Street. That was way back when I first started here professionally. Lonely Street was one of my first gigs. I work with Chris Dodge Entertainment pretty regularly. Hi, Chris. And I also, Southern Arizona Performing Arts Company, SAPAC, which is a relatively new company that I believe just opened and got running last year. I've done work with them as well.
Wow, yeah, I think I have heard of them somewhere. Without being in the musical theater world, it's like not exactly, you know, my
okay. No.
Yeah, it's not exactly, you know, I haven't really been in that part. So that's part of my inspiration to talk with you, because, you know, to ask you more about, well, tell me more about the Tucson musical theater experience.
It is an incredible place. We have so many talented people. We were discussing that, you know, we have so many talented people in so many areas, and musical theater is really no different. I think that there are a lot of great opportunities, and I think actually, given the climate, what's going on in the world right now, or in the US in particular, a lot of the theater companies here are actually making even more of an effort to be more inclusive, to include more, pardon me,
certainly,
space, making an active effort to open up dialogue with actors, the minority actors, with actors of color, and kind of get a sense of understanding. You know, I will say this, and it's not just Tucson, it's just musical theater in general. And this is when I was in school, this is something that really struck me, because my teachers talked about it really matter-of-factly, like it was normal. And I guess for them, in their era of musical theater, it was normal. You know, they're part of the idea of theater, going to audition, is they're looking for a type. With certain roles, they might be looking for a certain look, they might be looking for a certain sound, you know, and that can depend on a combination of things. It can depend on what's written in the book, you know, what's written for the show. It can depend on the director, it can depend on the music director, it can depend on a lot of things, all of those things. But it can be a very rigid thing.
Right.
When I was in college and I was still studying music, you know, my teachers were like, look, there are some roles that you will not ever play. And it might be because you are too tall, it might be because you're too short, it might be because you don't sound right, it might be because you're not, you know, they want a petite, like for instance, Glinda. They used that exact example, Glinda from Wicked. They said, if you are not a petite, pale, blonde woman, you may never play, you know, Glinda. Wow. And then there's real, typecasting is a real thing. And for them, coming out of the 80s and 90s, into the 2000s, when they were working, my teachers, it was just kind of a like, shut up and deal with it type thing. They were like, you will not have certain opportunities because you don't look a certain way, or you will have certain opportunities because you don't look a certain way. Wow. And that's really heavily, I mean, it is still a problem on Broadway, like a big problem, and in lots of theater communities. So, and that kind of, it's at odds with what's happening now in the country, where we're starting to go, I don't know about that. And it's such a deeply embedded theater tradition, that a lot of directors, and not here in Tucson, but like, you know, back east, you know, change is hard for the Broadway institution. A lot of them defend the way things have been done. And I'm glad to be in Tucson in particular, where the theater community here and people in charge are creating and engaging in such an active dialogue in that, not adhering so much to, you know, casting by, you know, ethnicity lines, casting by the way that people, you know, look, they have to fit an exact certain mold of what this character, you know, in their brain looks like. But branching outside of that, because minorities and people do lose out on roles.
Yeah.
Because of the really rigid way that musical theater in the past, especially on the East Coast and Broadway, has approached that kind of stuff. And I think it's a new frontier for a lot of directors and artistic directors and things. But in Tucson in particular, they're really engaging and wanting to hear from their actors in the community, all of their actors, no matter what, you know, creed, you know, they come
awesome. From. I mean, that is really a really great conversation to be having, and hopefully moving beyond just conversation and into action sooner than later.
And figuring out what that looks like, because in theater there are certain things where you're like, well, we need a certain look for this role or certain like this. So there's got to be some sort of middle ground, and it's not going to be exact, and the dialogues might be clunky, and there will probably be uncomfortable moments and mistakes. But that's how change is made. That's how we make progress. That's how, you know, things change.
Exactly. So Erin, just switching a little bit, I really appreciate you bringing this up and talking about it. That's really, really important, and I really appreciate that. So along that line, moving forward into the future, and like what's it been like for you during COVID, of course, and then moving forward, what are you hoping?
So COVID, every musician is like gonna curse 2020 forever and ever.
I think so, right?
Oh gosh, I have to send you this meme. You may have seen it, or I gotta send it to you. You should post it it's very funny. I'll send it to you. Okay. But it's about gigs like being canceled in 2020. Like, your gig's canceled and your gig's canceled and everybody's gig's canceled. So obviously, when the lockdown hit here, you know, at first nothing really changed, but within about 2 weeks, you know, everything was canceled, and it just kept rolling, and totally understandably and for good reason, and it was the right decision.
Right.
Absolutely. Like that was never, like, I never doubted that in my mind. It was at first it was almost like a great break. I was like, oh good, I'll have like a month off.
I know, right? A month. I know, right? Me too. I thought, oh, maybe, you know, maybe 2 months now.
Exactly. 5 months later, I'm like, so now that we're like 5-6 months in, I think we're getting a little bit of a better handle on it. You know, the first month was okay. The second month, and all that other stuff. I am very, very lucky to have a day job that I love and that takes care of my bills and provides myself and my daughter a wonderful place to live and things like that. I'm so incredibly lucky. So I didn't necessarily worry about putting food on my table or having a roof over my head. Mm-hmm. I was more, I lost the creative outlet a little bit, and that takes a toll, mm-hmm. just a little. I mean, there's a lot more important things to be worried about, but I'm glad that, the people that I know in Tucson, again, we're filled with amazing artists. So many people have, kept creating. They've kept creating in COVID. All of us have figured out ways to collaborate. Obviously, Zoom is a great thing to collaborate with. Brainstorming different things to do. There have been several projects that have popped up during quarantine that I'm really excited about.
Wow.
Going forward. I even have get this. Oh my gosh. I have a gig next Wednesday.
What?
I have a gig.
Where are you playing next Wednesday?
So next Wednesday, the 9th at 7:30 up at the Gaslight Music Hall in their outdoor stage. Myself and a band that I am part of called Sonora Borealis. Mm-hmm. We are doing a rock rewind classic rock concert up there. And it's going to be a quick 2-hour concert. It's all outside, beautiful stage, beautiful. 7:30 is the start time. Mm-hmm. And it's a drive-in concept. So it's outside, the stage is outside, obviously, and you buy a parking spot and instead of a table. Right. So you can drive with your car, you're socially distanced, nobody's in your space. The waiters and waitresses are there to help you. You can order pizza, you can order food from inside the restaurant. Yes, they're all masked up and socially distanced and keeping it safe for you. There's beer and margaritas. And yeah, I know, I'm really excited. It'll be my first gig in 5 months.
Wow. How exciting. That is so super, super exciting. I'm just so happy for you. That's just, I can't, maybe that means that things might start loosening up a little bit, or actually that's a creative way of addressing, starting to have more concerts. And
it's super fun and funky. I mean, I love the drive-in concept. I know it's Tucson, it's very hot here, so I'm not going to knock that and say that it's nothing. But it's starting to cool down a little bit, mm-hmm. and it's a cool concept. It's to do. We're going to play a lot of fun music, but and I think there's still tickets available. But even more than that, it's just being in the environment with people. And Sonora Borealis. There's 5 of us. We're all we love playing together. We love the music that we create. We love the vibe. So I'm just looking forward to the experience.
Oh, that sounds so
having fun with my friends on a stage. If there are people in the audience, which there are, I mean, they sold a lot of tickets, but even if there weren't people in the audience, I'm really excited.
So did you do any online stuff at all?
We did. We've done a couple rehearsals online. That's a little challenging because of the delay. There is a project coming up for me this fall that's going to be online. I don't know if I can talk about that yet, so I won't. Okay. But I won't reveal what it is. But that's going to be online, and you'd have to fact check me on this, but I think that Musical Theater International, who does licenses a lot of the shows, musical theater shows in the United States, they're actually doing offering a sort of package where they will, if you buy the rights, you record things with your equipment at home, right? And then you send them some of the clips and stuff, and they'll put it together for you in a package. Now you'd have to quote. Don't quote me on that. Somebody told me that, but it was the idea was very cool. that they are adapting for their artists and for the time. And they're helping to kind of facilitate, make it easier for art to endure, even though right now sucks and we can't be like in person together.
Right.
That's pretty cool. So hopefully, going forward, it will be a combination of online and in person. And when it's much safer, in person, more and more.
I know, right? Oh, I can't wait for live music. That's just going to be so fun. Yes, definitely. Whew. So I'm really curious about like long-term goals for you musically. What would be like dream gigs or dream shows to be in, or things that would be like to you would be like, wow, that's like a milestone, or that really speaks to me?
Well, I just want to keep performing. I know that sounds really like amorphous and like, you know, oh, everybody wants to keep performing, but I've been so incredibly blessed here, like to work with so many different people, you know, travel. I've traveled with other artists around the state to do gigs. Like we've traveled to Las Vegas to do a gig, you know, and all different types of gigs too, jazz, like disco, musical theater, that type of stuff. Like I just want to keep learning and growing as an artist. And as long as I do that, I think I'm okay. Obviously I would love to like book more gigs and do this and do that. But you know, a career goal, I guess, musically of mine is to just keep singing and just keep creating with other artists, and don't let it fall by the wayside, which is very easy to do because we're all very busy. We're all busy people with lives and kids, or, you know, pets, my cat over here.
And also with this year of 2020, when everything seems to have like shut down, it feels like, you know, after a while, you know, at first it was just sort of like, oh, it's not going to last too long, I don't think. And then it just seemed like it was going on longer and longer and longer. And just recently, I'm starting to feel a little bit like, okay, is it maybe loosening up a little bit? Are we going to be able to maybe start coming out of this whole pandemic and this shutdown and the shutdown on our creativity and the shutdown? You know, I shut down creatively for a little while, and it was like, yeah, it is hard, isn't it? And then
very difficult. At the same time, it has really forced me to be to reconceptualize what I consider to be artistic, like expression, which was really cool. And I'm that type of person. Like, I might not do something hard until you make me do it. So you'd be like, Mom, you got no other choice. I might know that I should do it. Maybe I won't until you take away all my other options. So this COVID was one of those things where when it started to get real bad, I was like, okay, what can I do to make this, like, I can mourn the loss of what I knew was connection and creativity and music for temporarily, because it will come back, you know, eventually in a new adapted sort of form. And I don't think it will be that, to be honest, I don't think it will be that much different than what we're used to. I think it'll just be with added distance and like screens maybe, you know, to keep people, we'll see. So I was able to kind of come to terms with that and mourn that eventually, while going, okay, like, what can I do with this? What kind of things can I do? Like, who can I collaborate with? Who can I chat with about, you know, what kind of things we can do over, you know, the internet, or make recordings and cobble them together type thing. So in that regard, I have enjoyed this because it has forced me, I have embraced it because it's forced me to kind of make it work. You know, it forces you to make it work.
Did you ever use that app called Acapella?
Although somebody recommended that to me.
Yeah, one of my little groups, the Red Moon Trio, we did a couple tunes. We put them on Facebook and different places.
And see, that's great. Like, that's a really cool thing that maybe people did before. I'm sure they did, but now, like, you know, it takes on this whole new life, and there's much more much more meaning behind it, because it's a way that we can be together without really being together.
Right.
And human beings will find a way, man. We will find a way to make noise.
I love it. I love it. That's exactly true. It's like, yeah, we're irrepressible.
Oh, yeah. We certainly are. It has its drawbacks, but it definitely has its positives too.
Mm-hmm. So I have like one more question, I think, and you know, based on your experience and based on how much you enjoy what you're doing, if you were to talk to somebody who's in high school or something like that, and they're coming up, what would you tell them? Especially, I mean, partly based on where we are in this COVID thing, but also in general as going into music or not.
The biggest thing that I would probably tell somebody is do it anyway, even though you're afraid. Like, do it. I don't care what, I mean, obviously within reason, don't like jump off a bridge. If you're afraid to jump off a bridge, there's a good reason. Don't jump off a bridge. But, not literally, but like, you know, when I could have been doing so much more sooner.
Oh.
You know, I could have spent more of my 20s I'm in my early 30s. I could have spent more of my 20s doing more music and learning more quickly. Had I just gone, you know what, I'm going to study music even though it scares me, or I'm going to go audition even though I feel like I'm going to get chewed into pieces, like in this audition, or I'm going to go, you know, one of the first times I sang jazz here in front of an audience was at that jam down at Espresso Art, and I didn't know a thing really about jumping in and jamming like in a jazz sense. You know, like it's a real different thing from like showing up at a cabaret night with the weird little music and going, hey, here's what I'm gonna sing. Like, that was really different. And I was scared, really scared. I was like, how am I gonna, especially in musical theater, people were very regimented. I have my audition cut. I'm gonna sing from this measure to this measure. And if you just make it work, pianist. But I was afraid, and I did it anyway because I wanted to learn. And I had come to a point in my life, I think, where I knew that learning was going to come with making mistakes. Like, there wasn't a way to get around. Like, you can't learn things without taking the risk of making a mistake.
Actually, your story, the story of going and doing that reminds me of my own part of my musical journey. You know, I was playing in a Sephardic Jewish band, and I learned about improv. There was no music, and it just opened my heart. And it just like, because I grew up in a classical family, and you know, and playing classical music, and I played cello. And like you, that strange impulse to just go do it. I went back to school at 32 to get my degree in jazz flute. You know, like that was, and it's like, you know, people are, what are you doing? It's like, well, I don't know. I'm going to go get a degree in jazz flute. And this one friend of mine said to me, grown-ups aren't supposed to learn a new instrument, because I couldn't play the flute at all.
What do you mean? Yeah. Oh gosh, I can totally relate to that. That's insane. Yeah, I've been there, and but you know what? You did it. And I bet you had fun doing it, and I bet you have fun now.
It is so much fun to do that. I mean, you know, yes, and I still do it. And
good for you.
And yeah, I do have a day gig though too.
Yeah. Like, you know, and I enjoy my day gig too, but I need to have both sides of that. My brain. I say brain, but it's not really brain. I need to have if I did all theater, I think that the overload of creativity might be too much for me. I like having two different different enough passions that I can, it feels like one never becomes a job, really. Does that make sense?
It does
like,
make sense.
Yeah, like what one of my biggest fears too, this is something that also took me away from majoring in music. I remember in college when I first started, one of the things that popped into my head in my musical theater like class, I'm like 19 years old, is I enjoy this so much. I love it. What am I going to do if I start doing it all the time and suddenly I wake up one day and I hate it? Like, what am I going to do if I wake up one day and it's become a job and I've lost that, like I've lost that part of myself that not part of myself, but like I've lost that outlet because I've become burnt out.
Mm-hmm.
That scared me probably equally to the people telling me, you're never making any money doing music. I was so terrified of that. I was like, what if I just do this job, I make it a job and then I lose it? It's so important to me. Like, I can't let that happen. So that was another thing that kind of, that steered me away from that. But I would tell them, as far as COVID-19, I think it's just a hunker down thing right now. Use the time to practice. If it were high school, or, I'd say use the time to practice, use the time to brainstorm. If you're really serious about it, coming out of college, depending on what kind of artist you want to be, like coming out of COVID-19, everything's going to change. Auditioning is going to change, like casting is going to change, like there's going to be a lot of things that are different. So as far as COVID's concerned, like hunker down.
Right.
And I think, and use the time to focus on yourself as an artist. Use the time to do interesting collaborations with people or things, or with, that you wouldn't normally do because you're very limited in what you have. When you lose all your options, you get really creative, right, with what you can do. But beyond the COVID-19, like, don't let the fear stop you from doing. Just because you have fear doesn't mean it's the wrong decision to make that choice to go.
Really good point.
Because that was the most like mind-blowing thing I learned entering into my 30s, was that I had a lot of fear surrounding a lot of things, but just because I was afraid doesn't mean I shouldn't try. Like, if you're afraid, I mean, if you're really not ready, then don't push yourself, but don't let having fear or fearing making mistakes or whatever, like, don't let that stop you from trying to learn and improve and doing new things. Go out and do it, and accept that you're going to make mistakes, and sometimes it's going to be embarrassing, but the mistakes are there for a reason. Like, you make them so that you won't make them again. Hopefully, you learn. And that's what they're for. You don't have to tear yourself down when you make mistakes. And actually, I think that can be hard in a field like music, because artists can be really critical, hypercritical, right? We talk about this, like, for such creative people, sometimes you can be real, like, I didn't like the way they did that. And it's hard to be vulnerable and put yourself out there when you know that can be the energy that you might receive. But, that's not about you, that's about them. It's not about you. It's not about you, it's about them. If that's the energy you receive, it's not because you brought it there. It's because somebody else has something going on with them. You go there to improve you, and you be humble, and you learn, and you have fun, and you have fun creating with other people, and let them have fun creating with you, and just go with the flow. Learn everything you can, is what I say.
Amen. Amen. Oh my gosh, that last part just really hit home to me. That just really struck me deeply. I think that's really important for people to realize that it's not about you, it's about them if they're throwing shade at you, or if they're, not being not being appreciative or whatever it might be, or not, you know, it is about them and it's not about you.
No, don't internalize it. It's hard and it takes practice, but don't let it, like, for me, it's like, I want to enjoy this moment. I want to enjoy this process or whatever. And if I choose not to enjoy it, that's on me. Even if it's because influenced by some sort of whatever's going on, energy or like if I choose not to enjoy it, that's on me. I don't necessarily have to enjoy it as much as I thought I would or whatever. You know, bad situations happen, bad gigs happen.
Right.
We've been there. But you know, a lot of it is how you spin it and what you make of it. And so, you know, you don't need to. I heard someone say it like this, like, you walk up to me and give me 2 cents. Like, you hold out 2 cents to me, right? There's your 2 cents in your hand and you're handing it to me. I get to choose whether I take your 2 cents or not.
Oh my
God. I get to choose whether I put those 2 cents in my hand and take it. Like, you know, whatever it is, life's handing you 2 cents, some person is handing you 2 cents, you know, whatever. You get to choose whether you take it or not. Because everybody's got 2 cents. But they're gonna
we do. We all have 2 cents.
They got more sense than that. There's no change shortage for these people, man. They got change coming out. But so you don't have to take it if you don't want to. You know.
That's true.
Good boundaries. You know. You can hear what people have to say or hear what situations or accept the situation as it is, like COVID-19, without completely spiraling. We all spiral a little bit, and we have moments, you know, because this COVID-19 thing is like it's traumatic. It's like a worldwide trauma that's going on, but we choose ultimately how we are going to experience it, I guess, to try to make the best of it. So that's
Erin, that is awesome. I am so happy that you've joined me today. I mean, everything that you've spoken about has just really touched my heart, and I'm really glad that you've taken the time today to be with me. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
What? Oh, it's all good.
I'm sorry, but thank you so much.
It's been, oh my God, it's a pleasure getting to know you more. I can't wait to hear you again. You know, I just heard you that little bit. I think was that at Josh's house or something?
Yeah.
And it was like, you started singing and I was like, oh girl, this girl sings. This one, I was like, oh my God, I need to know more about her, you know?
And I just want to say, I absolutely love your energy. I don't know what it is about you, but I love your energy. I just wanted to let you know that.
Well, thank you. So thank you again for listening to this recording and this interview with Erin Anderson. And do be sure to check out her upcoming performances. And I'm really curious what her collaborations that are coming up will be. And in the meantime, you're listening to KMKR Radio 99.9 FM, coming to you live from Tucson, Arizona, and the Xerocraft building. And I'm your host, Venus Fox. Join me next time.